Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. So the last time we stopped at data types in Java. Today we'll look at hands-on declaring these data types. And remember, in Java we have our primitive types as well as our reference types. So the primitive types are basically our building blocks. So for today we'll look at primitive types in Java, the byte type, right? So it's a 8-bit signed 2's complement, and we already know signed integers or signed data types are the range is split in half, okay? One side for negative numbers, the other side for positive numbers. So if you don't have an IDE for today, we'll look at just an online Java compiler, okay? So let's get that. So it's your first time writing code. So let's look at that. Okay. So with the, let me zoom in some more. So with the online Java compiler, it comes already with a class, hello world class, and you have your main. Okay. So it's called main.java. When you have your IDE, your main.java file should be the same name as your class name, your public class name. Okay. Okay. So let's clear that out. Let's see if it runs. Run it. Okay, try program is.pro. Okay, so we've seen here that the Java file runs. So first and foremost, we could see here Java is very robust and object oriented from the get-go. So you could notice all these different classes, and this is the main method. Okay, so you could add different attributes and actions in the main class and so on. But we'll look at classes later on. Okay, but Java is object oriented from the start. So let's look at declaring variables. So byte, so that's the byte type. My first byte, we could set that equal to 10. Okay, so again, Java is statically typed, so you have to declare the type you need first before the variable name, okay, as opposed to Python, which is dynamically typed. And if you need to print, you'll have to call your system .out.println, okay, and you call that my first byte. Let me do byte, okay, and you need semicolons to end your line of code. Okay, so that's the byte type. Okay, let's run that. Prints my first byte. And just a note, remember 2 to the number of bits gives you the decimal. Okay, so the byte type range is from -128 to 127. So if we put, let's say we try to put 127 here. In the underlying hardware, it's out of range, right? So it's going to say for this allocation of the byte type that you want, 127 is beyond the range. Let's do 129. Okay, so 127 is in range, but 129 will be out of range. Okay, so here, if you notice here, it says incompatible types, possibly loosely conversion from int to byte. What it's saying is your byte type 129 is out of the byte range. So you're trying to set a byte to an integer range, which is more bits, more allocation of bits versus the byte type. All right, so if we do 127, you will not get that error. Okay, so your allocation for the byte works with the decimal 127. And if you go to the negative side of your allocation, it's the same approach if you go beyond -128. Okay, the next type we have here is the short type. Okay, so we have this short type here. So how do we declare short type? You say short. Okay, and these, just remember, these are the primitive types for Java. So my first short. So now the short type is 16 bits, right? So it's double. And it's also 2's complement. Okay, so it's 16-bit, 2's complement, so it's signed, right? And the range here, the decimal conversion, -32,768 to 32,767. Okay, so that's the range there. So let's set the short type. Let's go beyond range again so that we could see more errors, right? So 632,769. Okay, and then let's print or short type. Okay, let me move some of the code here. Okay, so let's put byte types here, so you know how to declare and initialize a byte type. So let's declare and initialize the short type. So we could do system dot out dot print ln. So the system here is a class, by the way, and we'll cover classes later on. But for now, this is how you print. Okay, so my first short. All right. So when you do this here, okay, loosely conversion again from int to short. So you're saying the value you have is more of an int type because it has more range versus the short type, which has more less range. So you can't do that. So you'll get that error there. Okay. So let's set this back to 32767. Okay, it should be in range now. Okay, so that's why I have these ranges in the slides which I built. Okay, so that's the short type. So we've done 2 of the 8 primitive types. The next primitive type is the one we use very often, which is the integer type. Okay, so usually when we code, we use the integer type. Do we always need it? No, maybe for some data that you have, the byte type will suffice or the short type would suffice. If you know that beforehand, if you know the problem that you have will not require that much amount of memory allocation, you could set it to byte or short, which are or smaller allocation of memory. Okay, so the int type is 32 bits. So we've seen it 2 to the 32 minus 1, 2 to the 32. Okay, so like from here, negative 2 to the 32 to 2 to the 32 minus 1. That's the range. Very large. Okay, you can see it here. Very large number. Okay, so let's set our int type. So int my first int equals, let's call this 32,000. Okay, that's it. 320,000. Okay, 320,000. So we do system dot out dot print ln my first int. You call the name of your variable. Okay, and then semicolon here. Okay, print that. You've successfully declared and initialized a int. Okay, can we declare a int or a byte or a short or any primitive type without initializing? Yes. What do I mean by initializing? Setting a value to the variable. Okay, what do I mean by declaring? Just stating the variable name. Okay, so how do we declare? Well, we could declare by saying int. So I want the int allocation, name the variable name, my second int, and then semicolon. So here I just did a declaration, right? As opposed to here, I did a declare and initialize, right? So I declared the variable and initialize the variable. So that's the language used in programming. Okay, so declare and initialize versus declare. Okay, what if I want to set my second int to my first int? I'll just call the variable. So now I'm initializing my second int here. Call the variable name and set it equal to my first int. Okay, so now second int has the value of my first int. So if I print my second int, okay, so let's do here my second int. Let's change the variable name, my second. Okay. We now have my second int with the value of my first int. So you'll see it print twice. Okay, so same value. Okay, so that's declaring and initializing versus as opposed to just declaring then initializing. So you could do it in one step, or you could do it in 2 steps. Okay, so you could, if you're starting code and you know your variables beforehand, you could declare all your variables that you need and then initialize them later, or you could combine the steps. Okay. What if I need multiple variables to be an int? If I need multiple variables, this is just, you know, things that will help later. So I could say int my first int. Let's call this my third int. And you use a comma, right? So you use a comma to separate. So third int, comma, my fourth int. And what if I want to set those to my second int? All right, so I just say my third int equal my second int. Okay, and then you could say my fourth int equal my third int. Okay, so all these values will have 320,000. Okay, inside. So let's just print, right? So let's print my third int and my fourth int as well. Okay, so instead of first here, change that to third, and then instead of second, we'll change that to fourth. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so all the values, okay, have my first int as the value. Okay, so that's ints. So we could, so again, this is just showing you many different ways to initialize variables. So you could use a comma if it's of the same data type. You could declare first and then initialize, or you could just do declare and initialize. One good thing is sometimes you need default variables, so it's nice to declare and initialize on the same line, because you could have these you could have these values that you could revert to, right? So if the variable is not initialized to the value you want, you could set it to 0 or something. Okay, so that's declaring and initializing variable data types. All right, so the other one is the long, right? So this is a long data type, and it's a 64-bit, right? So remember, int was 32, short was 16, byte was 8. So now long, 64, very large number, right? And you could access the range by doing long.max value as seen in the slides here. But let's look at declaring and initializing a long. Okay, so to declare and initialize a long, let's go down here. We type in the variable name long. So we need this long allocation in memory, and you say my first long, right? So that's your variable name. And long values are very large. Okay, and the question is, why do we need all these different data types? And maybe I've mentioned it before in the other video, but sometimes your numbers could get very large depending on the application that you're trying to write in your programming language, right? So for like spatial coordinates and so on, maybe you'll see more long data types than bytes and shorts, right? So again, depends on your application. Okay, so my first long, let's call this 3. Let's put a lot of zeros. I'm not even sure what that is. Okay, or another way we could write very long numbers is we could do exponents. So 2e to the 60. Okay, hopefully that don't break the long value. Okay, so that's system. So that's 2 times 10 to the 60, very large, right? 60 spaces. System .out .print ln, and you print your long value. So my first long, that's the variable there. Okay, so that's, let's see there, Okay, so that's very large. So right here it says you need a double for that. So let's do to the 6 or something, okay? Because exponents very large. Oh boy, so it says still too large, right? Because remember this loosely conversion from before that we looked at, it's saying what you're trying to allocate, what you're trying to initialize to this variable is out of bound, right? So that's what it means. So let's do here. The value is very large. It's like 922. Okay, so let's do maybe the exponent force it to be double, but let's do. Okay, let's try that because the range here. This is a very large range here. If you could see here, okay, very large range. Okay. Okay, so that's a very large range there. Okay. So let's print. Okay, print. Oh, integer too large. So this is too large. Oh, that's crazy. Okay, now it prints. But it should have printed. Maybe it's because of the online compiler here. That's weird because in my IDE, okay, so it's probably the online compiler. In my IDE, long is a very large number, so maybe the online compiler has some background process doing limitations there. Okay, all right. So these were integer types, right? So these are let's put this. Let's make a comment here. These are integer types. What do I mean? Counting numbers. No fractions or decimals. Okay? So whole numbers, okay? Okay? So that's the numbering for these types here. The next types are float and double type, right? So these are decimal types, right? So these, and they're all primitive types. Okay, so we have decimal, or floating points. Okay, so the first one we have for, okay, so here we could see Java has 1, 2, 3, 4 integer types, right? 4 main integer types or whole number types. Well, so now the decimal types are two main decimal types, okay? And there are float here and double. So how do we declare a float? Same thing, right? So you have to name your type. Float, my float. Let's call this my first float. And here you can see the float range here. So float range are exponents, right? Exponents, so you have 3.4 times 10 to the 38, and then 1.4 e times 10 to the exponent to the negative 45. Very large range. Okay, so for floats you need decimals, so 20.5. Let's make that our first float. Let's do a system dot out print line and print my first float. Okay, so that's your first float. Yeah, so I know, let's see here. What's that? Yeah, that's crazy. That should be a float. Anyways, I'm not sure why this is doing this, but float my first float. Oh, for floats in Java, yeah, that's the thing. You need an F, right? So in C++, you could declare a float and I'll know without the F, but for Java, you have to state the float by saying a F on the float value, okay? and then it'll pick up that it's a float. Okay, so floats need, so for float, it's very funny. You have to declare that it's a float, and then for the number that you're going to initialize, you have to have that f behind the number to declare it's a float. Otherwise, it's going to think it's a double. All right, so that's how you declare your floats. Okay, and I comment out the top part here so that only this one prints. Oh, and by the way, in the print statement, if I need to concatenate, I could have stated like I could add a string here, my first float, and then to concatenate, you do a plus. Okay. Maybe this needs a space here, so let's add a space. And it'll print my first float. Okay, but just to make stuff easy here, since we're only focusing on declaring and initializing these data types, we'll just print it like this. We'll go in depth into the print function and formatting later. Okay, formatting using the print formatting outputs. Okay, so the next type you have, that's the floating point types or decimal types, is the double. So you could say double, my first double. And then for this one, you don't need that f at the end, right? And you can see the double range is way larger than the float, right? So if you do double dot max value, the double range goes up to 308. Okay, so let's do, okay, and then system.out print line my first double. Okay, my first double. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep the first part here capitalized just to be consistent here. Okay, so now we have the double. Okay, so 2000.312. So that's declaring, initializing a double. And again, just like before, as I mentioned, you could declare first, you could declare one, or you could declare multiple variables of the same type first, and then later initialize. You could declare and initialize to a default value, or you could just declare and initialize, like what I've been doing. Okay. So now that these are all the numeric types. Okay, so these were all the numeric types in Java. Okay, so these were all. So we've declared and initialized all the different numeric types in Java, and we see the range of these, right? So like the range of the float, the double, ints, and the integer types. Okay. So how many integer types Java has? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. How many floating points types? 2. Okay. How many numeric types? 6. Okay. All right. So the other primitive type that we'll declare and initialize here is the character type. Okay. So character type. So these are non-numeric, right? So let's maybe you could do a non-numeric types in Java, or we could call these word types or something, right? Slash. Let's call this word types. Okay, so there'll be either a letter. Types. Okay. So these could be either character, which is a single letter. You also have string, but that's an array. In the underlying structure is an array. we could look at string as well, but we'll look at that later. So for fundamental purposes, the first one is character type, which is a char. Okay, so you do my first char. And then we could set this. We could even set it to numbers, right? Because it's the ASCII encoding of these numbers. and then we do system.print system.out.print line, and then my first char. Okay, so you've declared and initialized your first character. And again, this could be anything on the keyboard that's printable. So if you look up ASCII character set, you'll see what can be print and what cannot be print. Okay. So if we print these character types, okay, so let's separate, right, using a print statement to show so here we could say declaring word types. Okay, and then do a /n. Okay, hopefully that works here. Okay. What's going on there? Decimal, or okay, I needed comments there. Declaring word types, system.out println cannot find symbol. Oh, so that's should be print here. So be at peace with your compiler. Here it needs print here. I've missed the T. Okay, and then here it is, declaring word types. If you notice here, it actually prints 5, right? So the character 5, right? So it prints the 5. If I need A, I could do that. What if I need 2 characters? Can I do this? A, B? No, you can't. Okay, can't do A, B. Okay, so character types, it's a single character encoding, right? So it's, if you look here, it's a 16-bit. You have 16-bit Unicode, 0 to 65,535 characters. Okay, so single quotes, only one symbol inside that quotation. Okay, so one symbol, and it'll print A. Okay, all right. So the next type that's a non-numeric type is the Boolean type. So in Java, remember from reserved keywords, we have true and false that are built-in reserved keywords. So if you want to create a Boolean, we could say Boolean my first Boolean. Okay, and we set this one to true. Okay, so true, reserved keywords, they turn blue. And then the next one, my second Boolean, and then false. Reserved keywords, they become false. So those are reserved keywords. Okay, so system.out print line. Okay, yeah, so for this one I didn't need the /n because it's already a print line. So okay, so my first Boolean. Okay, and then system.out print line my second Boolean. Okay. Okay, I missed second. Okay, so now let's print those. What did I miss? Okay, so I missed the T. I missed the T here. Okay, so it prints true and false. Can we set these Booleans to 1? Can we set it to 0? Let's see. Okay, so Booleans is on or off. Okay, so it could be on or off. Can't do that. Okay, so if you want to do on or off, where on is 1 and off is 0, you need an int, right? Or one of these maybe byte type, right? That's the lowest one, okay? So if for Boolean, for 1 in Boolean, that's the true. And for off in Boolean, that's the false. And remember, just kind of recall, remember the sequential and combinational circuitry that I've mentioned before in the previous lecture on these underlying logic gates. Okay, so this would be a basic on or off gate. Okay, 1 or 0, like flip-flop thing, right? The switch. Okay. So that's our primitive types. Okay, so we've covered declaring and initializing all the main primitive types in Java. So we can conclude that we have 4 integer whole number primitive types in Java, 2 floating point types, right? So that's 6 numeric types. Then we have the character type and the Boolean type, right? So that's about 7 primitive types. That's what we said before. All right. About 7. Okay. Well, 8. Okay. So we have byte type, short type, int type, long type, float type, double type, char type, Boolean type. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 primitive types. And we've declared and initialized all of them. Okay. Hope I'm making some impact here. Thank you again. Okay.